Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vol, and in this video we're going to carry on making our sci-fi armour by making the arms and shoulders. So we're doing pretty well so far, and we've just got the limbs to go in terms of the arms. We've got our legs sorted and we need to start adding some detailing as well. I'm going to focus on the arms today, but there are parts of detailing we'll cover which is going to obviously be applicable to other parts of the armour as well. So let's start with the basic bits of this, and we're going to do just some cylinders like we did for the legs for the arms. Now these arms are in an A pose, but we're going to start off with everything quite vertical just to make everything easier. There are ways around this, but why make your life harder? So I'm going to bring in a cylinder, we're going to up this to 256 vertices to make this really rounded. Let's just G that over to here, S to increase the size of it, that looks about right, and then I'm just going to S and Z to make this a bit longer, somewhere about there. Now we'll angle this later to be sort of in the right place, and we'll worry about that when we get to that point. Now we need the lower arm as well, so let's just Shift and D, Z to bring that down, and we'll get that really close. In fact, we'll probably add a bit of an overlap later, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. I'm just going to go into vertex mode, X-ray mode, and then S to scale these in a bit so it looks right for the wrist. Now from this point we need the armour to be able to, well, effectively sort of flex inwards, because we don't want straight armour, we want it to be able to sort of go into that sort of position. And to do that we're going to need to accommodate a lot of the space. So we're going to start boolieing out some shapes. So let's just firstly get the cursor in line with this, so Shift and S, cursor selected, Shift A, mesh and cube, and we've done this before a number of times with other objects. So let's just G and then R to rotate it. We probably want this rotated about 45. That will give us a good sort of angle of movement. Select there, Shift there, and then I'm going to press F, and then I want a difference using ND. We've talked about ND in a previous video. If you've missed that, then do go back and have a look. Well, there's a separate video about ND in the description. We'll also Shift and D there, come to about here, click, and then once again F, and then difference. And now we've got those sorted out. Let's H to hide that, and we can just now realize that if we press R and then G, this would sort of work quite well to allow this better arm movement. Now we are going to work with how this is going to rotate. We don't want the rotation point here, we want it, well, here effectively, but we'll deal with that at another point. Now we come to probably what the hardest bit is, and the bit that I would suggest is the most tricky, at least as a thought process, and that is if we put this back again, we're going to be leaving this massive gap in the elbow, which would be really, really dangerous. So we want to have that armoured and covered up. So let's just select, what should we go for? Let's go for this cylinder, Shift and D to duplicate it so we know it's in exactly the right place, and for this one we'll delete that Boolean modifier. I'm going to S to scale it up a bit, G and then Z that down. Let's just isolate these. So G and Z somewhere to about there, so it's in the middle, and then we'll come out of isolation mode, and this is probably about a thickness we need. We might scale this in at the bottom, but we'll deal with that in a second. Now we don't want this going all the way around, so we're going to start deleting some bits out. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into X-ray mode and delete all of the vertices past the halfway point, which you can tell from the origin. So let's just press X and delete those vertices, and we end up with this sort of shape. Now we'll do a bit more with this in a moment, but to begin with let's Shift and D, and then we're just going to press R, and I'm going to rotate it 10 degrees, so just typing in 10. And I'll do the same with this part, R, 10 degrees, then I'll hit minus to go in the opposite direction, and this is going to be our interesting shape for our shoulder pad. Let's isolate these and have a look at them. Now with this like this, we can actually just boolean these together in most instances. Let's click there, Shift click there, Control and plus, and it's had a bit of a problem. But if we change this to fast, oh no, it still hasn't solved it. So you'll notice we haven't actually got this bit of the object here, so that hasn't actually worked. Now with a slight oddity of Blender, let's try that the other way round. So we'll click there, Control and plus, and then go to fast, and that has worked. And you can see that Blender can be a bit temperamental with booleans, but this would work. If I go into apply and then H to hide this, we can see we've got all of this vertex, basically this line here, which is what we want. and we'll deal with this in a second. So that does work in fast mode, but I just want to show you a quick alternative, which is also another way of doing this, which is if I can click this, and press Ctrl and J, we now have one object. If I come here, press L to select only these parts, and then go to Snapping, Object, and then Split Edges and Faces, what you can then do is trick Blender by pressing G and then Enter, and it will work out where all of the edges would intersect and touch. And you'll notice it's given these two as well. That's because this works off, if I just undo it, a threshold. So if I bring that down, let's just add in like 001, and then do the same thing, G, but don't move it, and Enter. There we go, we've got that working really nicely. So this is a way of tricking Blender into adding these vertices, and this won't have any of those booleaning problems, but it is a slightly longer process. I would generally go the Boolean way and fiddle with the fast or exact option, but this will work. We just need to add some edges between each of these points. So I'm going to hit K to go into Knife Tool, click there, press Y to go on the Y-axis, C to cut all the way through, click, and then space, and we've got those. And we've basically ended up in exactly the same point. So two options there. Then we need to delete the edges that we don't want. So I'm going to Alt-click there, X, and then vertices, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the ones down here. So Alt-click, X, and then vertices, and we get this much better, and if I come out of isolation mode, more interesting shape. It's just got a bit of a curve to it, or this ridge line, which is going to make it look better. Let's come back into isolation mode. I'm just going to select that edge and shift select that edge, press F, and we'll come there and press F, and then Alt-click there, Shift, and then F, and then Alt-click there, and then F. So now we've got this shape looking much better. Now before we continue on with this, I do just want to show one other technique that is a bit less versatile for some situations. If you want to create an armor panel where you need to create some shapes and intersect them, but this does work in this instance, and otherwise I'll get lots of people telling me that I've missed something out that was obvious, and that's kind of fair enough because there's a lot of ways to do things in Blender anyway. So let's just bring in a cylinder again. Let's S and Z, Control and A, and apply the scale. And we're going to set this up in a similar way. We're going to go into vertex mode, X-ray mode, and delete out all the vertices up to halfway with X and then vertices. Go into edge mode, and let's select that edge, shift select that edge, F, alt select there, and then F, and then alt select there, and then F. Oh, just need to click that one as well. And staying in edit mode, it can be in any mode. We're in edge mode here, it could be in vertex mode or face mode. I'm going to select A and then R and then 10 and then minus to get that good to go. And we'll go back into object mode, come to your modifier, and I've got this old modifier panel, so I can come to my mirror there, or we can go to add modifiers and then just type in mirror and then bring that up. And at the moment this is not doing anything because it's in the x-axis. We want to do it in the z-axis, which comes up with this shape like we had before, where we've got too much stuff going on, we've got problems. We just need to click bisect on the z-axis, and then we've got this working. So there are other ways of doing this, and I just wanted to make sure I've covered as many of them as I can think of, so you can pick the right method that's going to work for you. Obviously we need to come and then apply this, and that will be exactly the same as what we've got now. Anyway, back to the arm creation. And at this point, this arm is looking a little bit long. We could also think, if I go into face mode, and we're going to change this to work at the median point, we could just S to scale that in a little bit, so it matches the shape of this armor. Don't worry, we're going to deal with the fact that it's overlapping a bit there and here in a second, but before we do that, let's just make this a bit more interesting. And once again, I'm just going to do the same trick. Cube. R to rotate it to maybe 30. G. There. F, and then difference boolean, and then H to hide that, and then we can just do another one. So Shift A, mesh, and then cube. S. R, 30, but minus, and then G, and then we'll do that maybe a bit further away. So F, and then difference. You can also just use Control and minus on your numpad, but I actually got used to hitting F and clicking on the menu just as a potentially faster option to do that, though with some add-ons that would be a better way to do it there. Let's just H to hide that, and you'll notice we can rotate this, and all of those boolean objects have been parented to this, so it will move with it and you won't have a problem. Let's just G and then Y that back a little bit. So we've got a bit more space with this. And then we probably want to add something for this armor to rotate around. So what I'm going to do is Shift A, Mesh, bring in a cylinder, R, and then Y90. That's G and Z that down to the point where it's in the middle, so about there. S and then X to extend that out. And then S and then Shift and X to sort of bring that in to there. Is that round enough? Yeah, that's probably a good shape. We've got our scale messed up, so Control and A and scale. In fact, actually, before we even do that, we should probably get this better in position, but I want to do something with it first. So let's go into Edge mode, select there, Control and B, and we're going to bevel this, and I'm going to scroll up. Go up to somewhere like, I don't know, 32. So it's nice and rounded. And then what we'll do is come into, still a medium point, so that's fine. S and then X, shrink that in so it's a bit more interesting, I'd say, as a shape. Not perfectly round. G and then X to bring that back to just outside the edge of the shoulder pad, and object mode. And then F, mirror, and then we'll press A to change the axis, A to change the axis again, but we'll notice it's done it the wrong way, so we're going to press F to flip it, click, and we've got that good to go. Though this might be a little bit far still. Let's just select this, let's S and then X to scale it a bit on the X axis, so it's less extreme, and then we're just going to go into vertex mode. And with those selected, G and then X, and bring them in a bit, somewhere to there, and that's done that on both sides. That looks better. I'm totally ignoring the fact that this is actually touching the armor slightly because we haven't angled this yet. So at this point, we're looking pretty good on this armor. Now, let's just talk through some detailing. First, we've got this issue here that we want, well, something soft, like some rubberized armor to go here. So let's deal with that now. Shift A, Mesh, bring in a cylinder, and then I'm just going to S to scale that up to probably there. Let's G and Z that down. That's a bit more. Yeah, somewhere there is probably about right. I don't want it going over this armor. Then we're going to S and Z to scale it in and get something relatively thin. Now, this is up to you how thin you want this to be. Some people like really chunky ridges. Some people want them thinner than I'm even going to do. Totally up to you, but Control and A, apply the scale, go into Edge mode, Alt select that edge, Shift and Alt select that edge, Control and B, probably don't want it there, and we definitely don't need 32 vertices, so let's scroll that down, go to something more simple, like 6, something like that, probably 8 is a little bit better, go to there, and that looks pretty good. Then go into face mode, select that face, and we're going to use a nice little trick of pressing Alt and E, and we're going to extrude faces along normals and just make them a little bit further. And the reason we do this is we want a little bit of a gap between each of our ridges. Trust me, when 3D printing, this will count for a lot. It will really help you define the ridges of each of these shapes. So I'd really recommend this. Now, we do get a problem because we're going to array this in a second. And if I array it here, in fact, we'll do this with this at this point so we can see the problem. So add modifier, an array. We're going to change that to 0 and the Z to 1. We're going to put up this count to somewhere there. G and Z that down, maybe a couple more, something about there, and we've got that looking pretty nice. But we have a problem. If I isolate this, if we apply this, let's turn on merge, we're going to have a problem. So let's just have a talk about that problem so we can fix it really easily. We're going to apply it. If I then go to 3D print check and check all, we're going to have a huge number of problems. Look at all those non-manifold edges, and that is because we've got a face in between each of these layers because, well, there was a face there. So we don't want to do that. Let's come back to this stage, / and then we're going to just get rid of this visibility. And what we're going to do is go into face mode, click there, shift click there, and delete out those faces. This will now allow this array to work much better. It will cause a problem with booleans though, because, well, we've not got a solid object. So something that we're going to need to remember, and I'll cover this now, is that what we're going to need to do is have merge on. We're going to click apply, and then when we have this merged, we're going to go into edge mode, select this whole edge, press F, and then come here, alt click that edge as well, press F, and then we've got that sorted. Now if I do my 3D check, we've got no problems at all. Now I'm going to undo that all the way so we're back to this array, still with it hollowed, because I want to be able to change this if I need to. So we're going to leave that there, but it's something we need to remember for the future, or we could just apply this all now and then have it done. But I want to be able to change this if I need to. We're also going to add this flexible soft armor for where it joins to the shoulder. So let's Shift and D, let's R and then hit 90 and then just G and bring that there, and let's just S to scale it. And I want this scaling, but I don't want to make the ridges wider. I just want to make them basically have enough surface area to cover the shoulder and basically not cut off his armpit. So what we're going to do is press S, Shift and X, and we're just going to extend that to be larger, maybe somewhere there, and that will work. We might have to change this later, but you can see why we don't want to apply this array, so we can fiddle around with this. We'll deal with the shoulder in a second, but let's deal with some detailing, because I did say we'd cover some detailing here. Now, let's check this out. First thing I want to do is actually just do a quick check, which I'm going to click here, shift click here, and just R to rotate this. Oops, and I need to change that so we're rotating around the active element R, and you'll notice we can go really nicely to here. That's the sort of movement that we want. So with us happier with that, we can sort of be ready to go. Though I will say, let's just do that one more time. If we do the same thing here and then on there and then R, you can see we don't cover quite all of that elbow gap. So we might need to edit this. Let's go on do a lot, and we're going to come here and then just using ND, we can press F and cycle and then scroll up and down with my mouse wheel until we get to this object, and then G and then Z. I'm going to move that up a bit. So extending this elbow armor. Now if I rotate there and then rotate there, this covers everything we need to cover. So I want to make sure that this practically and actually does work. Now this does make this look fairly bulbous at this point. I would probably actually faff with this, to be perfectly honest. And what I mean by that is if I wanted this pose, I would just get to here, select this and do something like that to make this a bit more realistic. So this means that it's not really perfect movement on this armor, but it gets us to the point where we want to be. And you know what? Large companies don't worry about perfect movement anyway. They just sort of make it modeled so it looks good. We could always do some other things with this, like move this around so it's in the right place to begin with, or have this always rotated to somewhere like there. It's entirely up to you, but I wouldn't worry about this too much. I generally just have a little bit of a fix at the end. We could always do some things if we wanted to change this armor shape to be more interesting. For example, we could, I don't know, let's give an example, Shift and D there, and then S and then Z that to make it a bit more elongated, and then G that to something like that, and then Control and minus, and then H to hide that, and we'd have this more interesting shape. Or you could do it in literally the opposite way. We could move that here, there, do the same thing, and then we've got, again, that sort of armor shape that's a bit more interesting. I might keep that, actually. That's quite cool. Okay, yeah, we'll leave that for now. But you can fiddle around with these elbow shapes as much as you want. Now let's get on with the shoulder. Let's H to hide that. And what we're going to do is effectively just make a quarter sphere. I'm going to Shift A, Mesh, and bring in a cube. Interesting that I'm starting with a cube, but that's fine. Let's S to scale this up a bit, G and Z, and I'm going to press Control and like 5. And even this isn't smooth enough. Let's go to 6, which is the maximum we can go to. We could always apply this or apply a second subdivision surface, but this looks okay at the moment. Then I'm not happy with how circular this is, so we're going to apply this. And we could either do this as a modifier. You can go Add Modifier, Cast, here, Sphere, and put that up to 1, and it's going to make it perfectly circular, and then we're going to need to apply it. Now, this is probably only really worth doing if you do just need to keep this here and you don't want to delete anything out. So what I'm going to do is go into vertex mode, A, Shift, Alt, and S, and drag to the side, and you'll see this basically just changes how spherical it is somewhere there. Let's just N to get rid of that. Shift and Z to go into X-ray mode, and then, let's just isolate this. And then I'm going to select to halfway. I think we need one less. Let's try that again. We can always use our cursor, which we know is halfway, to be our guide, delete, and then vertices, and then we'll do the same thing for the middle, having a look at this, the middle looks like it's there. Oops, that should be in X-ray mode. So there. And then delete, and then vertices. And we've got our quarter of a sphere. Let's S to scale that up. Oh, I've actually missed on this. You can see that from where our origin is. So let's just select those as well. Oops, no, X-ray mode again. Delete, and then vertices. And then anyway, we're scaling this up from this point. Let's just G to about there. Now, you could do these shoulder pads as big and bulbous as you want, but wanting to do something a little different and to avoid legal complications, I'm going to make these relatively small. Let's just S and then Y to change the shape there. Make that somewhere about there. That looks okay. And then let's just make this a bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is go into edge mode. Select those edges. Let's E to extrude that out on the X to somewhere maybe there. And then do the same thing here. Let's E and extrude that out quite far on the Z. To have this going, covering lots of that. And then I'm going to Control and R and put an edge loop there that's about the same thickness, so we can put in some interesting edging to this armor. Now, if you want a larger shoulder pad, in fact, let's just go into this mode. Am I happy with that? Maybe S and then X. Do something about there. Let's just G and let's check that. We're going to need to make this a bit wider again. So let's G and then X, somewhere about there. So if you do want this larger, or you want a demonstration that shows this and how we could add iconography onto this, I have got a video that looks at shoulder pads in a bit more detail and covers a lot of little things like iconography and detailing. I'm not going to repeat all of that here. I've already sort of repeated a bit too much, but I wanted this to be relatively complete as a tutorial for this arm section, so I thought I'd repeat a bit of this. Let's go into face mode. In fact, actually, let's go into edge mode. Let's Alt select there, and then F, Alt select there, and then F, and then what I'm going to do is go into face mode, Alt select that, Shift and Alt select that, and then using the same trick, Alt E and extrude along normals, and we're just going to go a little bit further out to add in some cool edging. But we've got a bit of a sort of small elongated shoulder pad here. Let's rotate this around a bit, let's G that down, so again we're very obviously different in size and scale to certain sci-fi armor that will remain nameless. And then this, while we can't see it, is going to be potentially important if we, let's say, had something where we've got like a movement like that. So we do want that to be here. So I'm just going to leave this in place. I can move down this array so it's not getting in the way. And we're looking pretty good to go on this armor for the arms. Now what I do want to do is add a bit of detailing. Again, here we might want some, I don't know, some like joints. This probably doesn't look like it could go together perfectly or slide on the arm. Maybe it could. I mean, I guess you could get your hand through it. But let's make it look like these are two separate plates, the front and the back, that join together. So to do that, what I'm going to do is Shift and D to make a duplicate, press Escape, then I'm going to press S and Shift and Z. So we're scaling this on everything but the Z axis, and I'm just going to bring that in a bit. Let's Shift and A, Mesh, and bring in a cube, and then we can G, Z that down, S, and then Y, and make this nice and thin, somewhere there, S, and then Z to here, and then S, and then X even to there. And then with that done, let's Shift click, F, difference, and then we've got that there. Oh, this probably is a bit too extreme. Let's go a little less deep on this. So let's S, Shift and Z, and bring that out to somewhere there. And we could always add more detailing if we want. We could always come to this, go into edge mode, Control and R. Let's bring that down to here maybe. Control and B to bevel that out. Scroll down. We want that the same thickness approximately. That will do. Select that face. It's in face mode. E to extrude it back a bit. You can see how that's creating this as we go. Control and R, right thickness, face mode, E, H to hide that, and you can see we get this cooler detailing. Now, let's just maybe scale that in a little bit so it's not going across. There we go. And we've got that seam now on our armor. Now to make this easier to move around, I'm going to select this middle part. So there, Shift select that part and press Control and P, and pairing that to the object. So now what that means is if I rotate this, the other part rotates with it. And just to finish this off and where it's going to connect to his armored gloves, Shift-A, Mesh, Cylinder, G and Z, S and Z, S, Shift and Z, so everything other than that Z axis, go to about there. Don't want this to be a bit thicker. Can do. Let's go to about there. And we've got our armor that looks pretty good in our proportions. Let's just rotate everything around. So we're going to select there, 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 and there. Let's rotate that a little bit. Oops, I forgot the armor on the elbow, which we really want. That's R, G, and I think that's looking pretty good. Click, 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 click. Lots of clicking. Get that as well. Get that as well. And the one in the middle. Let's just select that way. Select that. F, and then we'll mirror that. Press F to flip it. There we go. And we've got our arms. So you can see. So hopefully you can see how this detailing method could work quite well. There are lots of ways of doing this. I will link a video in the description which deals with a couple of ways of doing these insets. I've covered this a few times on the channel, so I just want to do a simplistic way of doing it. But if you want something a bit more complex that either uses add-ons or doesn't, please check out those videos. It's got a lot of different options, some of which are really effective depending on what you're trying to do. So have a look at those. They're all in the video description, and you can see the thumbnails for those so you get an idea of what they're doing. Now at this point, we're really close to being done. Now what I'm going to do is also link in the video description a video of how to make these gauntlets. I'm just trying to be a bit efficient here, and while these videos are a week ahead on Patreon, so if you want these videos faster, join to the Patreon and then you'll get the next one ahead of time. What I don't want to do is just repeat a video that I've already done. I already feel like there's a bit too much repetition just by having done the shoulders again, so I don't want to have another video just doing the gauntlets. It's just wasting your guys' time when there's already a video there for it. So I'll bring those in between the videos, and then we'll start having a look at just finishing this off. We're going to add in the soft armor on the legs, we're going to add in the feet, and then just a few other little details. So we're very close to finishing on this, just the last detailing to go, and I hope you join me for that video. Have a great day, guys.